This was a good week of chapters, with pretty much just One Piece and Mashle sticking out the most for me. Now I'm going to try something a little different, make it a bit more podcast-esque stylistically. I don't know if any of that made sense, but my plan is just to talk about how I felt about the chapters instead of recapping them, see if that flows better, if it just is more interesting to listen to. Let me know if you want me to go back to just recapping the chapters or if this new just me discussing them is better. So we're starting off with One Piece chapter 1022, and this was a good chapter with a lot of exciting developments, especially the ending with Sanji and Zoro getting big hits on King and Queen, hinting at if they win, they'll be able to catch a glimpse of Luffy as Pirate King. I think most people are taking that as the series is ending. What I'm taking it as is that this is the first time Luffy will actually be on equal footing and elevate himself to a contender. Like in most of the other fights we've ever seen of Luffy, he's always been the underdog and never really seen as a viable threat, where I think after this fight with Kaido, he'll finally feel like a contender to the throne. That's important, as you can't be king of the pirates and always just be this natural underdog. You need to have the strength to contend with the other contenders. Now, the other interesting things were that, well, there were many interesting things. Showing off King and Queen's power, seeing that Marco couldn't hold them off forever, and even Sanji couldn't hold them both off. Hawkins and Killer's battle became very exciting, seeing how Hawkins is leaning more towards on the evil side of the pirates, lending me to believe that he would be on the opposing side of Luffy in the end. Because at this point, the way this arc especially is playing out, I have a feeling that Raftel will end up getting the battle between like good pirates, quote unquote, and bad pirates, where the worst generation will be split into two groups, the good and bad. For example, Luffy, Law, Kid, Killer, Bonnie, and Drake to some degree, maybe Urouge, we don't know enough about him, are on the good guy side, and like Hawkins, Apu, Capone, again maybe Urouge, Blackbeard, are on the evil side, as we have these two opposing ideologies, the real criminals versus the borderline criminals, as Hawkins is now using Kid as his sort of shield against Killer, as it seems as though Killer was getting kind of the upper hand, or they were sort of even. So that was interesting. Rizo's fight was entertaining, showing that he's struggling simply because he's too focused on Odin, and that all the Topiropo are down for the count for now. Like I said, I think when the building collapses, that's when we'll see them all get back up, when the island falls. But for now, they're done for this arc. Nekomamushi and Perospero should be an interesting fight, as everyone's getting kind of their major grudge matches out of the way, as this particular arc in Saga seemingly are reaching their end, but the series as a whole is still fairly far off from finishing. We still have quite a bit left, but the end is certainly within sight. So overall, I'd give this chapter a B. I wasn't as hyped about it as others, but I thought it was still a very good chapter. The fights should really ramp up now, as now we basically only have the big three left to fight. So we'll see how that lasts. Also, Luffy looks like he is all powered up from all the food he ate. Now we're on to Black Clover, chapter 303. And this was a good chapter. A surprising chapter, to say the least, as we see that Magna Kula is defeated. Now, who's to say if she doesn't somehow come back to life, but for all intensive purposes, she's done. And the main person who was able to take her out was Nezel, as most of the chapter was seeing his struggle to keep the secret, because he was also cursed by Magna Kula to not be able to say anything about how his mother died. So we get to see him having to live with that, as well as trying to protect Noelle. The other siblings simply didn't know, and that the lie that was told was that Noelle was the reason their mother died, even though it wasn't true. Nezel's fight with Magnicula was interesting, as Magnicula seemingly was unfazed for a minute, only to find that she couldn't move as well because of Nezel's liquid metal, and he was able to shatter her as she was still regenerating. As Nezel's also attacking, he's getting hurt, so he didn't come out of that unscathed. We kind of just sort of blitzed past it though. And Noelle gets the final strike because it's right that she does. And she's the one to kill Magnicula, which I thought was a nice touch. And the two siblings got one last moment of a near goodbye with their mother, which I thought was a sweet moment. Now, the big question is, where does it go from here? Now, the big thing with this is Magnicula even admitted that she was more curious about human strength and isn't super surprised she lost, it would seem. The problem is it took everything. It took, what did I say last week? Nezel, Noelle, Rill, Charlotte, Asta to some degree, Gaja, and Luck to take down one Supreme Devil, and there's still two more who will be coming out at full strength. So now the rush to stop the door is even more important than ever before, and that's what I think is very interesting. That we are losing quite a few combatants, and I still don't see it ending well. But this fight, at least, she wasn't at full power, and her greed to try to get a head start is ultimately why she died, which was interesting to kind of depower her and give the heroes a victory before their inevitable defeat. So overall, I'd give that chapter a B. I thought it was good. I thought the surprising victory was a good decision, albeit just barely was the right decision, simply because Magnicula still felt too powerful, but she lost, which is good because the other heroes were able to pull out at least one victory before their inevitable defeat. Now we're on to Undead Unluck, chapter 75, and this was also a good chapter, with the raid battle beginning, but this time we get to see it from the under sort of perspective, as they plan on climbing all the way up the tower to drop Fuko off to battle Spring. They separate into groups and they go. We see the different matchups and we find out that Spring has two forms of activation to turn someone into a cherry tree, or not a cherry tree, a cherry blossom tree, and that is to be touched by a cherry blossom or to be in Spring's presence for more than 30 minutes. So they have a bit of a time limit to get Fuko back and get out of there, and or defeat Spring. This will end up leading to quite the conflict, as now everyone's going to rush to the finish line or die trying. We see all the groups split up into their separate areas, and we end up getting the first matchup, which is Chikara and Top going against Creed. That should be a good fight, all things considered, seeing as how the two have been fairly together, Top and Chikara. They've been working together. They've been growing together, and it'll be interesting to see how they're able to top Creed. This is a big-ish fight for Chikara, A, because it's his first actual fight, and B, Creed tried to kill him when we first met Chikara. So we also see that Chikara has grown stronger with his goggles, and hopefully he'll continue to grow. Or we'll get a twist and Creed will kill both of them before moving up, which would be a hell of a twist, but I doubt it. But their fight begins, and overall I'd give this chapter a B. I thought it was good having the battle just begin. It's just going to keep going from there as each group separated from each other and are going to fight their own individual fights from here on out. So we've begun this war arc, and we'll see where it goes and how it stacks up to many of the other war arcs that are both currently going and have come before. So now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 74, and this was a very funny chapter. It was a bit of a nothing chapter, as we see that Mash is struggling mightily in his test scores. He's able to keep passing because he's so physically gifted, but intellectually not so much, and they have to study for their tests, which they do, or at least they try to help Mash study, and we find out that Dot's actually really good at studying, so the only one who's a kind of deadbeat in terms of learning is Mash, which I think is a really funny dynamic. So they all try to teach him how to learn, or they all try to teach him how to learn. They all try to teach him and help him study, but Mash can't handle it, which I find funny. His resolve breaks, and it's actually Finn that has to help him out, and we see that they continue to study and they're about to take their exam. Mash is sweating and so on, and then eventually passes the exam. And through the whole thing, it's a very funny just antics going on, which I enjoyed. I think Mashle can work quite well as something where you get the intense battles, but then you'll have mundane chapters like this, in the same vein that Ippo works in that way, where you'll have major story beats and then for like 3 chapters there's a whole bunch of nothing happening. I think those breaks add more pop to the major stories, like how Sakamoto Days does it. And so this chapter was perfect in that regard, breaking away full stop from the main story and giving us something ridiculous to just laugh at and enjoy. So overall, for Mashle's sort of standards of a nothing chapter, I think I'll give this chapter a B. I was considering it an A because it was very funny, but I don't think so. I think just it's a nothing chapter, but very fun in its own right. So I think a B is pretty apt for what it is. And so it was again good. It was them studying and us getting more connection between Mash and the characters, which never truly hurts the story to get that point across. Now we're on to Sakamoto Days, chapter 35, and this was a ridiculous chapter. It was fairly fun as we see the continuation of the gambling contest that Wu-Tang put to Sakamoto and co. Each of them has a set amount of coins, or chips, I should say, and we see that they do indeed cheat to get the chips they need. However, they did it in a more interesting way than I had even put forth, where they basically cheated at all the games. Sakamoto more or less cheated in roulette, or I should say counter-cheated in roulette, and Shin cheated with his powers in poker, despite still not knowing how to play poker. Wu-Tang was able to cheat himself through counting cards and winning at blackjack to earn the necessary amount of chips he needed, as well as we get to see his backstory on why he has such a strong connection to Lo. The game ends up being tied, and now we have one final game to win Lo back, and it's Team Sakamoto versus Team Wu-Tang, and they're gonna play Old Maid, which is some kind of card game with like regular playing cards. I don't know what it is personally, but it's seemingly a simple game that they all know, but Team Sakamoto is not taking it very seriously, and whoever has the Old Maid loses the game, which I'm assuming is probably like the Joker card or something. And so Shen is thinking that whoever has it will visibly show that they have it, and what do you see is that Lo has the Old Maid, or at least she's sobbing. So it's not looking good for Team Sakamoto in this instance, which I think is excellently hysterical, because now they have to somehow cheat to try to keep her or something or other. I highly doubt Lo's disappearing. That's why this whole twist of Lo now being the one with the problem card is kind of hysterical, because I highly doubt Wu-Tang will allow her. Well, he'll lose on purpose somehow to see her happy or something not great, but I still think it'd be really funny, because again, this manga is also very funny, and that's what I think really helps it in its long run. So overall, I'd give that chapter a B. It was able to both conclude the previous chapter's gambling game while still having its conflict be alive as they tied in that last contest. Now we'll end up seeing if Team Sakamoto can somehow pull off the win despite being in a less than ideal situation. Now for some new ones, because again, I read many of these, so just for some fun, I wanted to talk about Candy Flurry, which I find is a fairly entertaining manga. Nothing super original, though ironically it takes its power system from One Piece, being that only a certain number of people have these rare powers and each one's unique. No two are alike. So it's a fun manga so far. Unfortunately, I don't really know everyone's name. But the battles have been fun. And in this chapter, the sort of villain team that attacked the main character's school are defeated by, I believe the main girl's name is Sumiyugi, I think, something like that. I know I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but it's something akin to that. And the battle was fun, but they end up winning. We get a flashback at how things aren't exactly as they seemed with the candy power, seeing the facility that wanted to make them ended up going too far with their experiments, and we sort of find out what happened or how Tokyo was destroyed. Now, if you don't know the story, go read it. It's very entertaining, but we at least get some hint at the mystery at how Tokyo was destroyed, and we already get the first betrayal. And this universe's sort of, or the Rossetti, the kind of cops of the world that crack down on sweet users, are seemingly betraying the few sweet users that are in their command, as the instructor of the Rossetti exam arrives to pick up the sweet users, only to throw in Sumiyugi and now Eri, who is defending Sumiyugi. So there's just interesting stuff going on. I thought to spotlight this series. Maybe eventually I'll get the hang of the names and everything and be able to explain a bit more, but I thought this was a fun series just to point out. It was chapter 16, if I forgot to mention it earlier, and I would give that chapter a B. I thought it was, again, good, entertaining, as it almost always is, and the twist, it leads it into an interesting direction. The decision made there to have the Rossetti betray the main characters already leads it that you can have some more fun with the series, even if maybe it was or wasn't. You can do some interesting things. So I just thought it was a good chapter. Another one I wanted to spotlight because I thought it was just very good was the Hunters Guild, chapter 7. Now, the Hunters Guild I think is really great, and for me personally really shows that one of Horikoshi's assistants is really talented, as I think the series has a lot of unique charm and life to it, and really pulls a lot of Horikoshi's art style forward. In my opinion, it really enhances it, and the story so far has been very good. In this particular chapter, we meet new characters and the training regiment that Volo has to go through to become a hunter, and how grueling and ridiculous it is. We see that his resolve is tested and that he is determined to get through. Ironically enough, to an interesting degree, Volo is similar to Deku in that he does cry quite a bit, and yet I feel his resolve is better than Deku's. You can see the influence, at least, in that. We also get a major reveal at the end of the chapter, which leads to some very interesting things. I don't know how or in what way this is really going to affect the story, but for now it's an interesting plot twist. So overall, I'd give this chapter a B. It was a very good chapter, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this goes. Hopefully it lasts quite a while. Now again, this one and Candy Flurry are very early in their tenure, so you never truly know. But I'm hoping this one pulls through. At least gets a good solid 100 chapter run and doesn't get canceled after 15. Because so far, this one's one of the more interesting ones that I read of the new quote-unquote gen. But yeah, I'll leave it off there. I didn't have anything else really to say about the other chapters, like My Hero or Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, they were good and all, but I just got nothing new to say. That was all the chapters. Hopefully this new, both lax and less me recapping style is entertaining and or just fun to listen to, I guess. Let me know if you preferred this one or if you want me to go back to recapping them or something else. But with that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.